The Battle of Apamea was fought on 19 July 998 between the forces of the Byzantine Empire and the Fatimid Caliphate. The battle was part of a series of military confrontations between the two powers over control of northern Syria and the Hamdanid Emirate of Aleppo. The Byzantine regional commander, Damian de Larsenis, had been besieging Apamea until the arrival of the Fatimid relief army from Damascus under Jaysh ibn Samsama. In the subsequent battle, the Byzantines were initially victorious, but a lone Kurdish rider managed to kill de Larsenis, throwing the Byzantine army into panic. The fleeing Byzantines were then pursued, with much loss of life, by the Fatimid troops. This defeat forced the Byzantine Emperor Basil II to personally campaign in the region the next year, and was followed in 1001 by the conclusion of a 10-year truce between the two states. Background: in September 994, Michael Boetzes, the Byzantine military governor of Antioch and northern Syria, suffered a heavy defeat at the Battle of the Orontes at the hands of the Fatimid general Manjutakin. This Fatimid victory shook the Byzantine position in Syria, and posed a grave threat to its Arab vassal, the Hamdanid Emirate of Aleppo. To prevent its fall, Emperor Basil II himself intervened in the region in 995, forcing Manjutakin to retire to Damascus. After capturing Shazar, Hims and Raphania, and building a new fortress at Antutus, the emperor withdrew, leaving Damian de Larsenis as the new Duke of Antioch. De Larsenis maintained an aggressive stance. In 996 his forces raided the environs of Tripoli and Acre, while Manjutakin, again without success, laid siege to Aleppo and Antutus, but was forced to withdraw when de Larsenis with his army came to relieve the fortress. The next year, de Larsenis repeated his raids against Tripoli, Raphania, Awgh, and al-Lakmeh, capturing the latter. At the same time, the inhabitants of Tyre, under the leadership of a sailor named Alaka, rose up in revolt against the Fatimids and requested Byzantine assistance. Further south, in Palestine, the Bedouin leader Mufarij ibn Dafil ibn al-Jarrah attacked Ramla. Siege of Apamea and the Fatimid relief expedition. In early summer 998, de Larsenis learned that a catastrophic fire had broken out in Apamea and destroyed most of its provisions. So he marched towards the city. The Aleppines too endeavored to seize Apamea and arrived there first, but withdrew at the approach of de Larsenis, who could not permit a vassal to grow too strong and intended to capture the town for the emperor. Although ostensibly allies with the Byzantines, the Aleppines left the provisions they had brought with them to be collected by the inhabitants of Apamea, aiding them in their resistance. Subsequent events are presented by several authors, including the brief narrative of John Skylitzes and the more extensive accounts of the Christian Arab Yahya of Antioch and the Armenian Stephen of Taran. Arab accounts also survive, all apparently drawing upon the work of the 11th century historian Hilal al-Sabi. The most detailed version is preserved by Ibn al-Kalanizi. The governor of Apamea, al-Malariti, called for aid upon the Fatimids. According to Ibn al-Kalanizi, the eunuch regent Bahawan appointed Jaysh ibn Samsama to command the relief army, naming him governor of Damascus and giving him 1,000 men. Before confronting the Byzantines, the Fatimids had to deal with the revolt of Tyre and the rebellion of Ibn al-Jarrah. The Byzantines attempted to aid the besieged at Tyre by sending a fleet, but it was beaten off by the Fatimids, and the city captured in June 998. Ibn al-Jarrah's revolt was also suppressed, and Jaysh ibn Samsama returned to Damascus, where he stayed for 3 days to gather his forces for the relief of Apamea. There he was joined by the troops and volunteers from Tripoli, assembling a force numbering 10,000 men and 1,000 Bedouin riders of the Banu Kilab tribe. According to Skylitzes, the Fatimid army comprised the forces of Tripoli, Beirut, Tyre, and Damascus. Meanwhile, de Larsenis was vigorously pursuing the siege, and the inhabitants of Apamea had been reduced to famine. being forced to eat cadavers and dogs, which they bought for the price of 25 silver dirhams apiece. Battle. The two armies met on the large plain of Al-Mudik, surrounded by mountains and located near the lake of Apamea, on the 19th of July 998. According to Ibn al-Kalanizi, the Fatimid army's left wing was commanded by Mashur Islov, governor of Tripoli. The center, where the Dalamite infantry and the army baggage train were located, was under the command of Badr al-Atta. The right was commanded by Jaysh ibn Samsama and Wahid al-Hilali. According to all accounts, the Byzantines charged the Fatimid army and drove it to flight, killing some 2,000 and capturing the baggage train. Only 500 Ghilman under Bishara the Ikshidid remained steadfast and held firm against the assault, while the Banu Kilab simply abandoned the fight and began looting the battlefield. At that point, a Kurdish rider, named Abul Hajjar Ahmad ibn al-Darak al-Salil by Ibn al-Atir and Ibn al-Kalanizi and Barkefa by the Byzantine sources and Abul Faraj, rode towards Dalasenis, who was near his battle standard on top of a height and was accompanied only by 2 of his sons and 10 men of his retinue. Believing the battle won and that the Kurd wanted to surrender, Dalasenis took no precautions. As he approached the Byzantine general, Ibn al-Darak suddenly charged. Dalasenis lifted his arm to shield himself, but the Kurd launched his spear at him. The general wore no cuirass, and the blow killed him. Dalasenos's death changed the tide of the battle. The Fatimids took heart and, shouting, "The enemy of God is dead," turned on the Byzantines, who fell into panic and fled. The garrison of Apamea too sallied forth, completing the Byzantine debacle. The sources give various numbers for the Byzantine dead. Makrizi mentions 5,000, Yahya of Antioch 6,000, and Ibn al-Kalanizi as many as 10,000 dead. Most of the remaining Byzantines were taken prisoner by the Fatimids. These included several senior officers, including the famed Georgian Patrikios Chortovenel, a nephew of Tournai Karastavi, as well as the 2 sons of Dalasenis, Constantine and Theophylact, who were bought by Jaysh ibn Samsama for 6,000 dinars and spent the next 10 years as captives in Cairo. Stephen of Taran gives a slightly different account of the battle, whereby the victorious Byzantines were surprised by an attack by the regrouped Fatimids on their camp and that one of Dalasenis's brothers and one of his sons were killed, as well as the general himself. This version is commonly rejected by modern scholars. Aftermath. Dalasenos's defeat forced Basil II to personally lead yet another campaign in Syria the following year. Arriving in Syria in mid-September, the emperor's army buried their fallen in the field of Apamea and then captured Shazar, sacked Hisn Masyat and Rafania, torched Taka, and raided the environs of Baalbek, Beirut, Tripoli and Jubail. In mid-December, Basil returned to Antioch, where he installed Nicephorus Auranos as due. Although according to his self-description as the ruler of the East, his role seems to have been more extensive, with plenipotentiary, military and civilian authority over the entire eastern frontier. In 1001, Basil II concluded a 10-year truce with the Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim,